Hello and welcome to Gadget Joe, and today we have another tempered glass chassis by Thermaltake. The Versa J24 is another ATX chassis that features tempered glass side panels with RGB lighting. However, this time round it features some very welcome additions, but first let's take a look at the box. It's Thermaltake business as usual, with an image of a J24 in the middle and a list of the lighting modes available to the left, with an index of the available sync options to the right. On the side of the box you get a specifications list that outlines details such as the dimensions, weight, colour, drive bays, fan and radiator support and clearance. Take the case out of the box and you get a very tidy looking chassis that is relatively compact yet visually striking. The front of the chassis is wrapped in a mesh pattern plastic cover, and the side features a full-length 3mm tempered glass panel. Taking a closer look at the front panel, you can see that the mesh pattern features a soft foam on the inside. This means that the airflow is very impressive here, and you get a built-in dust filter too. It's a very simple yet effective look. Paying attention to the glass panel, you can remove this via undoing these thumb screws here, and then putting your hand on the side, slide it across, and then the panel features a black trim around the edges and also a metal bracket on either side that hold the glass into place. Before we take a look inside the chassis, we will turn our attention to the rear end. It looks pretty standard here, with a rear I/O cutout and exhaust fan mount at the top, 7 expansion bays and a PSU drive tray at the bottom. Flip to the opposite side panel and you'll get a basic panel here that also removes via the thumb screws in the same fashion as before. At the top of the J24 you get the external I/O across the front, with 2 USB 3 mic and headset ports, loading and power lighting, a combined power and reset switch. Moving further back you get a decent sized mesh that covers the top hexagonal patterned air grill. There is space for 2 120 or 140mm fans here. The mesh air filter is made up of a relatively tight pattern that acts well as a dust filter. It is magnetic, flexible and strong, and once in place it sits flush with the top panel. Now we have covered the externals of the chassis, we can get started on the internals. Inside you get a bag of accessories that contains a bag full of mounting screws, standoffs and more. A bag containing 2 sync cables for connecting to the relevant board, a speaker, a mounting plate for the PSU, and last but not least the user guide. The J24 is an ATX case, but it is a very compact one at that. There is less space to the right of the motherboard, meaning it appears much taller than it is. On top of the shroud are 2 drive trays for mounting SSDs or 2.5-inch drives. These can be removed via this thumb screw, and you then fix the drive to the plate, slot back in and you are done. The shroud does feature a viewing window to the left here to see the PSU and the threaded air ventilation. Move up and you have the motherboard tray. This features enough space for up to an ATX motherboard with mounting points across the panel. There are no rubber grommets present on the J24, just this raised angled lip with a cutout for hiding cables through. There is a 120mm fan included at the rear for exhaust air, and on the front are 3 ARGB fans with space behind to mount a slim radiator, more ideally one found on an AIO with supports for up to 360mm VADs. There are a bunch of cables included such as USB 3, HD audio and power panel headers. Move to the rear of the chassis and you once again get a pretty basic design with a large open panel on the motherboard tray. There are more spaces to mount the same caddies that are seen on the front of the PSU shroud onto the rear panel instead, using these spaces here. Simply attach the drive and secure in through this slot and screw into position, ideal if you're wanting a cleaner look on the inside. At the bottom you get the inside of a shroud. There are 2 further hard drive caddies ideal for the larger 3.5-inch drives. Securing the drive requires no tools, as these simply slot into position and then slide back into place in the caddy. To the right of this you then get some space for the PSU and the cables to fit. There is a surprisingly decent amount of space in there, meaning you should have enough room to manage your cables. Turn the case around and this is where you insert the PSU. Insert the PSU and using the securing plate you then secure it into position. At the top left of the rear panel you get an RGB fan header, with a header to fit the correct sync cable depending on your motherboard. 3 fan headers that are occupied with the included ARGB fans, a further fan header that is not RGB for the rear exhaust fan. Below this is another header to add an LED strip to the setup. The lighting modes are changed via the reset button, and last but not least is the power header that comes with a SATA power connector, a much more welcome addition to the older Molex fittings. We will touch upon the lighting modes of the J24 very shortly. Before we do that we need to remove this front panel by placing your hand underneath the front and pulling the entire panel away. You can see the fine mesh we mentioned earlier here. You now get 3 120mm ARGB fans. These are Thermaltakes 5V ARGB LED modules that feature 9 addressable LEDs, hydraulic bearings for super smooth silent operation. They look very nice too, with a black housing and frosted white fans that distribute the light evenly. Once you have the fans connected to a power source, you can really start to appreciate the true beauty of them. There are multiple modes to choose from, such as wave, flow, RGB mode, radar, breathing, full lighting, static and off, as you can see here. Once the front panel is back on, you can see the lighting effects nicely through the mesh. It does dim them slightly, but that's actually a good thing as it takes away the harshness of the lights and thus will cause less distractions. And that pretty much wraps up this review of the Versa J24 ARGB edition chassis. The J24 is a very basic case with a very basic compact design, but overall it's a very nice tidy one at that. The compact design actually makes it feel bigger than it is. There is a decent range of storage mounting options and even space for water cooling in the form of an AIO. It certainly wouldn't be a very practical chassis for a custom loop. That's not to say it can't be done, but you may want to take a look at some of the bigger cases on the market for a custom loop. The lighting modes on the ARGB fans are very nice and will sit right in any gaming setup. What's more is if you really do hate RGB, you can set it to a single colour. The ability to further customise these by connecting the controller to the relevant motherboards means you can use software suites such as ASUS AURA Sync, Gigabyte RGB Fusion, MSI Mystic Light Sync, RGB Sync to synchronise the lighting modes with the entire build such as motherboard, coolers, fans, LED strips and more. Another plus point is the fact that the entire J24 chassis can be put together and assembled without any tools, and there are plenty of ventilation points throughout, meaning that airflow is plentiful and there are no restrictions, something that has often been an issue with glass panel cases before. It would have been nice to see some extra little features such as support for top mounted radiators and maybe even USB 3.1. But when you consider the case only costs around the £80 mark, you already get a significant amount of value for your money. All of this has awarded the J24 ARGB our Gadget Joe Silver Award of 3 stars. And as always, if you want to get your hands on your own J24, I have left a link in the description below. Don't forget to click that thumbs up, share and hit that ever elusive subscribe button to help this channel grow even bigger and better. And that's it from me for now, and I'll see you in the next video.